Good afternoon, everyone. Greenworks Trust welcomes you to this online session. Greenworks Trust is a Mumbai-based organization working for nature conservation, and we strongly believe that education and awareness are very important. So, during this lockdown time, we bring to you these informative sessions about various topics. Our today's topic is the mysterious world of spiders, and our today's presenter is Devi Priyadarshini. She has done MSc and MPhil from Utkal University, Orissa, and she is now continuing PhD from the same university. She is currently working as a natural history museum scientist with National Museum of Natural History at Bhubaneswar under MOEFCC. She has worked with different projects on biodiversity, including the famous tiger translocation project at Panna National Park, Madhya Pradesh, with Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. She has also worked in the Indian Coastal Zone Management Project at Bhitarkanika Estuarian Ecosystem, monitoring crocodiles. She later joined Central Forensic Science Laboratory (CBI) under Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, before coming back to nature and wildlife. So now I hand over the session to Madam. Can you please take over the session?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sarvesh. Thank you for the brief introduction. That was quite a lot, in fact. I hope all people, those who had to join, must have joined by now, or else they will join in between. I think should we start because it's already time, respecting everyone's time, and probably we can start. So, like I say, most of us know spiders as insects. First of all, they are not. To those who know it, great. Welcome to a world where we will learn about the mysterious world of these eight-legged curious creatures. I am Devi Priyadarshini, and this presentation is being organized by Greenworks Trust, Mumbai. Let's go ahead and find out what exactly is so mysterious about these spiders. Yeah, they are arachnids. Now, this slide tells you why do we call them as spiders. So there is a beautiful story I would like to narrate. Many of you would know this is a Greco-Roman story where there are two characters. One is Athena, the other one is Arachne. So Arachne is mortal. Like in India, we have got human beings who are considered mortals, and there are devatas who are considered as gods. So in the same way, they had Arachne, who was a mortal, and Athena was a goddess. And because Arachne was immortal, she once challenged the goddess that she would spin better. She was a weaver's daughter. When she challenged, what happened was Athena got angry. Both of them wove, and Arachne wove better. So you can see Arachne here, who's being beaten by Athena out of jealousy, and later she goes on to hang herself. Now the goddess got very offended that because of her anger, somebody is going to die. So she turned her into a spider who keeps hanging all her life as a punishment, and also to save herself from all that ruining of her name that she killed somebody. So this is the whole story, how spiders became arachnids, and arachne comes from that name. But this is only mythology if you want to believe it. So how many of you here present are actually arachnophobic? You are talking to somebody who is arachnophilic. We will go ahead and make sure that you are no more arachnophobic. Probably this creeps out of some kind of ideas where you see there is a small fable which tells you about a king being so inspired by the spider who keeps building the nest after so many animals, the bird and the monkeys and everybody else keeps breaking it. So that's the King of Scotland. And there is this Little Miss Muffet beautiful poetry which also says that spiders are scary. But to actually understand why they are, probably the legs, the way they crawl, the way their eyes actually shine, and those venomous bites about which there are a lot of misconceptions. And also that if they urinate, it is harmful for the skin, they can cause infections and God knows what not. All these kind of notions have probably caused this kind of arachnophobia to be one of the world's major causes of fear in people. in people. I was actually very surprised to learn this, that arachnophobia is one of the major causes. We will go and do some myth busting ahead. Let's go ahead. So we know that Arthropoda and the general three subphyla divisions, into which we have Chelicerata, from which Xiphosaura, the old living fossil animals come from, which is Limulus, and in India we call them Tachypleus, or the giant king crabs. Then we have Arachnida, in which we have spiders, scorpions, snakes, mites, and the rest of the eight-legged creatures. Then we have Pycnogodia. This is the sea spiders order, where where you have sea spiders, which is very different from the Xiphosaura and Arachnida. Now this is Mandibulata, where you have the rest of them. Yes, and Trilobita, which is extinct. So I forgot to tell you that Hexapoda is the one in which insects come. And now further on, you can see here how much of insects do we have in the world, how many spiders do we have in the world, at least how much you can say, and how many vertebrates do we have. So all that we see as wildlife prominently, audience, is we understand that vertebrates is all that we have. And look at the other invertebrates, they form only 5%. So 73% of this whole world of the animal kingdom is filled up with insects. So imagine if they are not controlled by somebody, they are not predated upon by somebody, what would be the condition of the plant, the flora, everybody else who is a food to the insects. So arthropods, after insects, I think the highest, and there's the seventh in when you consider the diversity also, they are the ones who control the insects, which is a very, very vital point in the ecosystem balance. Now, everybody must be thinking that why insects need to be controlled. I've told you before, all the flora which is eaten up by insects needs to be controlled. And you can see here, this is a very interesting slide which tells you how much of the species in the whole gamut of the population of each particular taxa is left to be discovered. So only 17% of the spiders have been, or the arachnids have been discovered. And out of 6 lakh arachnids present, and we have known only 1 lakh, out of which 50,000 odd, or just 48,000 odd, are spiders. So we are yet to discover so many spiders. And look at the insect population likewise. We have just found out 20% in the whole insect world. And imagine if we get to know all the rest, how interesting it would be. These are the other kins and kith of spiders who are there. So in class Arachnida, we find all of these, of which you would know scorpions very prominently. Many of you would know pseudoscorpions also. Ricinulids we do not find here, and whip scorpions will be available. Many of you must have seen these daddy long legs, which are usually confused to be spiders, but are actually opilions, very close relatives of spiders. And you know about acari, which is mites and ticks, available on the skin of different animals as ectoparasites, and the tailless whip scorpions. So these are the other members in class Arachnida. Okay, so here we have inside the spider's body, you can see what it looks like exactly from the inside of a spider's body. What is most interesting is, if you see this one, it tells you where exactly is the sucking stomach and the muscles which help the stomach to suck, the venom gland, the chelicera, the fangs from which it is injected, the mouth, exactly, right? And then we have the rest of the gut area, the anal pore, the place where they put the sperms into, and then the ovaries and the book lungs. We will go a little deeper and find out what the book lungs do exactly and why they are called book lungs. You see the structure which has got pages in a collated organ kind of a thing. They have a space for airflow and diffusion of air, and they would blow. I think it's time I should show you a video where you can see the book lungs in a more prominent way. So please focus on this and try to see what is going on. I hope it is visible to all. Is the video playing?
Yes, yes.
Maybe, yeah. The video will zoom out and you can figure out what the organism is in a little while. You can see this. This is the epigastric furrow. These are the book lungs, which are actually opening and closing, you can see, and these two are the gonopores into which the male palps actually get in. And this is the anus. So this is basically the ventral side of the spider, which I can fast forward a bit to show you. Zooming out. That is how the book lungs actually function. So coming back to this slide, I think you have seen the silk glands also. These are the silk glands and they are of different types to spin out different kinds of silk. We'll come to it later. Let us go ahead. Yeah, this is a very interesting slide which says that the figure of 8 has got to do a lot with the spiders. Like I say, if you see the structure of a spider also, it's like writing 8. Yeah, because they just have a head and a abdomen. The very thin connection is not any body part which is very prominent, which connects the two body parts. And they've got 8 eyes mostly. They've got 8 legs. Why I say mostly is because many spiders do not have 8 eyes. Few of them have got 6 also. Like Scytodidae family has got 6 eyes. So few of them have actually got 6 eyes. Let us go ahead and see what eyes can exactly be like. You've seen some of the eyes on the slide, so please focus on this video now. This is a little salticid. You can see the first anterior median eyes here and the rest of the eye spots developing. And could you see that the eyes in between were moving here? These are the rod and the cone cells in the developing stage which are trying to move. And the anterior median eyes in salticids have actually got more layers of receptors than the other spiders. So that is something which is very interesting. This is a salticid. You can see this is Rhini, this is Tetragnatha, this is Zodaridae stereonomorpha, and this is an ant mimicking spider in Corynidae. Okay, some interesting fun facts. Out of these, let me tell you, this is the largest spider, which is called the bird eater, Goalith bird eater. You can see a little bird here, which is being eaten up by the spider. That comes under Theraphosidae and Amegalomorph, not the Aranomorphs or the small spiders. This is a typical spider from Thailand. The picture credits are due to Nikki Bay. That is a Citra arachne. This is a Scytodidae. I was telling you, a spitting spider which does not wait for the spray to come, but it spits out in thin droplets on the silk and waits for the insect to get caught with the glue. This is a peacock spider, many of you would be knowing. In south of Australia, we find these spiders and they do a very beautiful courtship dance. This is a happy face spider or a theridion. And this is also found in Hawaiian Islands, not here in India. And the general fact that spiders suck up the food and they usually digest it outside their body and then just drink it up like a juice. So we go into megalomorphs a bit. In India, we have got some, look, I have written it approximately because roughly it is around 100 species we have discovered, because the latest will only be known when the other report comes up. This is the last report which says this. In 8 families, we've got 32 genera describing these many species. And in the whole world, we have got 120 different spider families, not megalomorphs, but all the families, including megalomorphs and aranomorphs. And 59 of them are Indian spiders, Indian families. These are different spiders you see, and all of them found in India. One is found from Odisha. This is Nilgiri, Idiops Nilgiri. And this is a trapdoor spider. You can see that the door opening. This is a Theraphoside. And this is Chilobrachys fimbriatus. So here is a little fact that we haven't yet discovered the Mesophyllae spiders, because if you see, the two suborders are Mesophyllae and Opisthophili. Opisthophili, we usually find all other orders in Opisthophili, but Mesophyllae, in which we find Lepistatidae, the only family which has not yet been discovered from India. But because its distribution is there in China and Japan and rest of the Asian part of the world, we are hopeful that it will be someday found in the northeast of this country. This is actually a little fact which tells us that the tarantulas fall. If you see this, this is not a photograph. This is actually a photograph of a tattoo which has been uh, drawn on the body of a man. And this tells you that tarantulas have a keeper's bride. Here you can see that tarantulas have been served on a plate. So this tells us the fate of these curious, cute animals, which actually has been a lot of, there has been a lot of trouble to them, and we are yet to designate them into scheduled species in the Wildlife Protection Act. I think just few of them have been put into Appendix 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act, but not many have been provided that lawful conservation which could have been done. And many of them fall prey into the pet trade also. Now, a bit about the venom. Yes, a few of the spiders, many have got this notion that the spiders are venomous. So we need to know about the venomous and non-venomous spiders. Mostly all spiders we find have got venom content in them, but very few of them have got the venom which can actually be fatal to man. So if you see the brown recluse spider, Loxosceles, we have this genus here in India also. So it would be wrong if I say that all spiders in India are non-venomous or not fatal, but we have not got any report as such which tells that a spider bite has actually caused death in a human being. Probably some of the reports say that there have been organ failures, there have been some kind of fever and rest of the things, but not death. So there is Brazilian wandering spider. You can see on the top. This is the brown recluse spider here, and few more in the next slide probably. Yes, the Latrodectus species. This is the brown widow, the black widow with the hourglass structure here, and the one which has already taken up a gecko for its meal. Now, black widow spiders or the widow spiders, which are typically found in Africa and some other parts of the world, have got this neurotoxic venom, which can cause severe pain and change rate of heartbeats, swell up lymph nodes, and do a lot of damage to the body. Death occurs very rarely, but has been seen occurring in few human beings. So yes, we can call them venomous. These spiders are not found in India, but we have Latrodectus genus, which has been reported from India. Latrodectus geometricus is there, and we are yet to find out whether they are fatal for human beings or not. The animal toxins, as I was telling you, this is about the widow spider family, and this spider is typically non-venomous, which is called the heckled obweaver or the Euloboridae family. That has got no venom at all. Let's move ahead. Yeah, this is a slide which tells you about the largest spider on land, which is Nephila, and it is called the giant wood spider. This in this slide you can see the male here and the female here. So this is about dimorphism or the sexual dimorphism in spiders. And in this slide you can see the actual difference in the size, where the male has mounted upon the female and is in a position to exactly mate. So this is how mating happens, and you can see the size difference of both the spiders. This is the female and the male in the same species of Nephila cooley. This is how it exactly looks, a bit of insight into taxonomy. We dissect the palps of the male and the epigyne of the female, and this is how it looks like after dissection. You can see the sperm storing organs and the epigyne, the epigastric furrow, the plate which covers the gonopore, and this is the embolus which exactly inducts the sperm into the female body. and the rest of the part, which is the seminal duct, in which the sperms are stored. This is the pedipalps of Nephila male. Okay, something on the legs. These are actually, you can see, they almost look like sharp organs which can attack. But this is the organ which actually helps them walk on their own web. And this is a close-up of a tarantula's legs, and this is that of a aranomorph or a orb weaver's leg. So this is the mystery behind how they hang. So before they can actually hang from the web, they will make a small mark like this, in which a rough patch of silk is pasted onto the surface, maybe the bark of a tree or leaf, anything. And from there, they will hang the rest. Here I have shown you a close-up. From there, they will actually try to drag another silk line, which is called a drag line also. And with these comb-like structures, this is the comb-footed spider. Is the voice not clear or something?
It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Sorry?
The voice is clear. No problem.
Okay, okay. And that is why these legs or these structures are actually so difficult to notice, but are so useful to the animal. You can see the structures which have been created only to say that this is how it starts, the hanging of the drag lines. We'll go into each of these a little more details in a little more detail. Mimicry and ballooning of the spiders, the silk webs, maternal care, camouflage, quickly predation, and then cannibalism. The wonder architects, I say a little fact about the strength of the spider silk. And this spider has been recently discovered without a name assigned yet from Peru in South America, where they have found this cave-dwelling spider which has created the silk henge. Because it looks like a stone henge, they call it a silk henge. And the center of the this whole web, you see, this is where the egg is laid. So can you see how much of protection it has been provided? It has provided by building the whole henge-like structure by a single creature, a tiny spider like this. So many of these spiders have been found nearby, but yet the female or the host of the web or of the nest has not been found. So it is yet to be discovered. This was in Peru in South America. So some of the more webs which have been built, and when on a dew morning you go out and shoot, you will get photographs like this, and you can see how intricate the structure of the spider web actually is, and how beautifully a spider can actually build its nest. So you see this tent which has been created so nicely. Sometimes it's an inverted tent or a sheet web, which is a basic web or a nest of a Citrophora, which is also aranid, and this is also an aranid which is built this web, which they are also called as orb weavers. Now, trying to show you another video. Let us see. Like I said, they have different kinds of silk for different kinds of work. In some kind of silk, they would wrap up the prey, which comes and sticks into one of these radii of the whole orb. This whole thing is called an orb. And sometimes the egg which is wrapped up is in the best quality of silk to provide protection so that they can resist water and anything else. The drag line which they draw from different tree branches is also there, which is called the lifeline. And many times the spider can eat up the silk and digest it back, so that it is a policy of reuse of proteins in its body. So specific silk for specific purpose. Let us go ahead and see this video. It's quite a huge file, so it's taking some time to open. Please bear with patience. This is not my video. This has been taken from the internet, and this just tells you how geometrically precise they are to exactly weave it in a way that it is equidistant in each radii. This is a spiny back orb weaver, which is trying to make a orb, and just see how it beautifully attaches every drag line, every line which it draws into the orb. Okay, so we'll go ahead. Yes, this slide shows a bit of maternal care here, where you find all of them with a egg case. This is Pusitia or the lynx. This is a Myrmearachna, which is an ant mimicking spider. You can see why it is called an ant mimicking spider. This is the mirror spider or Meotipa. This is another lynx spider, Oxyopsis swethae, and this is a wolf spider. So you can see the case is different in each, and there are beautiful storylines why they have got different kinds of egg cases. You see, Lycosyd has tied it under its spinnerets with a very tough kind of silk. Here, if you see, it almost mimics. This looks like the body and this looks like the head, but it is just opposite. Here is the head, this is the abdomen of the spider, and the whole thing is the egg case. Another interesting story with the Myrmearachna is that it will create 2 or 3 kinds of white silk patches like this, so that the ants who can eat away the eggs will be confused as to in which egg sac is exactly the eggs present. So that's how they are very careful and very precise mothers. Some more egg sacs. This is the Oleus lamarcki spider, and you can see the babies there hanging on the top of the web. And these are the babies in a better, clearer view. This is one with the egg sac here, and these are some eggs inside the web here. And this is again a Lycosyd with its egg sac tied into its spinnerets. Let us see another video here and what it has to show us. You can see the female here inside a sheet of web where it is trying to control and take care of the eggs in a way such that the eggs which have been damaged do not go back and rot the rest of the eggs there. Here you can see few of the eggs are damaged and they will not be hatching into babies. So what it does is it tries to take care of the eggs in a way, move them in a way such that they get detached from the damaged eggs and they are put together into another place and they can be saved. So whenever you see a spider going into a web or into its egg case, it is basically doing this. This is a videograph which I have shot under the microscope, and it keeps spinning also. So wherever it is needed to keep the eggs together for hatching, it will do that. Okay, so this is another slide which is showing Lycosids with the babies on its back. Let us see a video which will be easier for you to understand how they exactly mount the mother. This is a Lycosid where the egg case has already hatched, ballooning has happened, and then the ballooning doesn't happen. They just hatch out from the thing which was tied previously to the end of the mother's back. They've just climbed up onto the back, and you can see babies here all over mounting on the back of the mother. This is the sacrifice of a mother. Actually, the spider takes care of the babies for say 3 to 4 days before they can actually disperse and live an individual life of their own. You can see the mother is living and all the babies are dependent on it, climbing on its back. There is another Salticid there on the top where the babies have come out and it's trying to tend to them. So here we are talking about another form of, yes, that's a wolf spider. That they are called Lycosids. The another form of mother's sacrifice here we are talking about, this is Stegodiphyus, also called as social spiders, but few of them have also got a life which is mostly solitary. So this Stegodiphyus, if you can see the pattern on the body of the spider and this, you can make sure that they are the same spider. And on the two other photographs you see, the mother is vanished and there are babies which have already hatched out. So what happened is, this is the mother and this is the fate of the spider which has happened after some time. So this mother just lays itself down to death so that the babies can feed upon the baby of the mother, on the body of the mother and grow. So this is a typical case of matrophagy And this particular phenomenon is seen in Stegodipus, which is from Ericidae family, and Amorobius. We find both of them in India. Amorobius is a bit less known, slightly a bit misidentified also, but Stegodipus is quite common, and you can see this. Mark that this is the web of this Stegodipus, which is around 5 feet in length, and this is the place where the spider was exactly located, this photograph. Okay, let's go ahead. Cannibalism is another trait in which black widows are exactly very famous. The male, they say, is eaten up after the mating is over, sometimes before the mating is done, and mostly it is after the mating. Why it happens so? You can see the dimorphism in Nephila I have shown you before, the rightmost photograph, and this is the Argeo, or the most common garden cross spider which we find, and this is the male, if you can see here. Very tiny and very small. This is so insignificant that the only purpose in its life is only to fertilize the female and then serve itself as, many say it's a gift, but it is not so. Serve itself as a protein meal before the spider can exactly lay those eggs and fertilize them into fertilized eggs for hatching. So because it has to stay hungry for the next few weeks, it is also said that they take this meal and then just go into maternal care. So a lot of hypotheses with them. But that is the thing, that they serve as a protein meal for the female before they get into maternal care. There is a very beautiful video here which I need to show you. This is from the Smithsonian Institute. This spider, if any of you know, is called Portia, and a very famous salticid which has got these goggle eyes, you can see, and is assassin when it comes to all spiders. Let us see the video to see a very interesting phenomenon which happens with Portia and the rest of the spiders. That is also part of cannibalism because it eats up the other spiders. This is video from, this is by the Smithsonian, of course, this is not my video, and you can find it on YouTube also. This is basically a garden cross spider, like I said, the Argeo genus, and it is trying to rest on its web. Just see what happens further. There is a fly which is there in the web, it catches it, makes sure that its meal for the night is sealed nicely. You can see how it's trying to seal. A little later, the Portia makes its mind that it should find itself a place from where it can exactly launch an attack, so that it can immediately pounce on the spider and then see what happens. This is one spider in the whole spider world which has a very, very typical way of attacking other spiders. Do you see how stealthily it's coming? Using its legs. And the Argeo hangs aloof of everything, feeling that it has already shooed away its enemy. It finds a very advantage point and stalks. Gets itself ready, cleans its fangs, all set for the attack. Look at those eyes. With so much of precision, it's trying to plan its attack so that the spider does not fall down, because the little moment Argeo gets to know that there is something there, it will immediately draw a drag line and fall down. So till now, this is not aware that there is a attack being planned right near its nest. And in the next fraction of a second, Portia launches itself straight onto the abdomen of the spider. Boom. Done for the day. It exactly captures the prey in a position from where it cannot do anything. That is the joint between the head and the abdomen, so that its legs are not involved. You see, all the legs here are falling out after it has injected its venom. So that's the story of Portia. Let's go back. Yes, this is our poster boy, Nephila, poster girl. And all these spiders you see on the sides are inhabitants of this huge nest or this huge web or orb, which can go up to a spread across more than 1 meter. Now, what are these other spiders doing here? They are, the last one here at the bottom is a kleptoparasite. This is Argyrodes flavescens. The one on the top is a silver drop, which is again Argyrodes. And the one in the first place, that is a male of a Nephila, which we have shown you before.
Excuse
So
me.
do you see that the male of the Nephila and these are all of the same size? So these are basically insignificant to the huge giant wood spider, and they stay somewhere here amidst all these prey and all the dirt and dust which is there on the web. This is a clean web, but what has been observed as a behavior in the spider is, can't see the pictures? Oh, okay.
The smaller picture, there are three, I guess, and we can
Fine,
see
I'll
only
show
one.
you a little later. I'm so sorry, those pictures have vanished somehow. I'll show you a little later. You've seen the male of the thing. I'll show you the silver drop Argyrodes a little later. So they are inhabitants of this web, and what they do is they steal away the spider's food, which is there as leftover. Now this is a huge spider which eats upon a lot of insects in a day, and whenever it leaves out anything, a leg or a wing or something, these kleptoparasites are there to feed upon it. So they are opportunistic feeders which carry out their whole life cycle in this web. So you see, this web is so useful for both for the host and also the other people who are sheltering themselves there. That is the story of a kleptoparasite. Okay. This is mimicry. You can see very well that all these spiders belong to different families. This is Corinidae. This is Salticidae. This is also Salticidae, the Myrmearachna. This is the crab spider, which looks like an ant. This is actually an ant, and this is an ant mimicking spider. So you can very well make out the differences and also see how closely they are mimicking each other. Mimicry is another evolution in the spider world in which spiders behave like ants. And this belongs to Zodaridae. This is Hermippus. This feeds on ants. And all of these spiders feed on ants. So they are sometimes mimicking this ants to save their eggs from being predated upon and also to feed upon the ants. This is Amasia or the crab spider, which looks like an ant. It's already feeding on an ant, if you can see. This is a wasp mimicking spider. I'll show you a wasp in the later slides. And this is a bird drop spider or Citra arachna. So they mimic different things, sometimes to prey and sometimes to save themselves from predator. Like Citra arachna gets merged with the surroundings so that nobody finds it to feed upon. Okay. I think we need to use the other presentation.
Many of the photos are not visible.
Sorry for the interruption. I need a break here because this is the one which we were talking about. And yes, Myrmearachna platypes, the one which was missing. Here you see this is an ant, and this is an ant mimicking spider predating upon an ant. So you see so much of similarities and how well they have tried to mimic through evolution. These are few predators of the spider. So here you can see a scorpion, a wasp, which we will be talking about in detail, a wren or a bird which is eating spiders, and then a damselfly. You must be thinking, how come could a damselfly predate upon a spider? But there have been cases where damselflies have also predated upon spiders which are not very venomous or not very active or dynamic. Obviously, a damselfly cannot attack a Nephila, but it has been photographed to have predated upon Euloborus, the one which I said that it is a non-venomous spider in the previous slide. So predation and control, like I told you, it has to control the insects in the animal world. You see a lot of spiders here around, and they are trying to predate upon different things. This is a Salticid Bianor at the end here, which is very restive and found mostly in the paddy lands. And this is Stauronomorpha from green one. Okay.
All 4 photos are visible.
I think everything is visible to me. I don't know why it is not visible to them.
Yeah, it is very much visible.
Okay, so these are some of the predators again. You can see the size difference. This is the Naphocid. This is a lynx. This colorful one is Scylla semiglottis, which is feeding upon an ant, and a lynx again. Do you see the size of the spider and the size of the prey? The difference in the size. The honeybees can also be eaten up by lynx spiders and stalkers and ambushers like the crab spiders. Probably it is due to slow internet. Please wait. I can also be going a little slow if it's one needed. Still one slide. Few people probably are not able to see it properly. Okay. More clearer vision. Yeah, I think everything is visible. Maybe. So this is a very interesting video again.
I think you need to go to the folder and play the video. It won't be play here.
Yeah. Probably it's not playing from the presentation.
Yeah. The videos are not attached here.
Yes. So this is again not my video, has been taken from the internet and is not an Indian spider which is being shown, but I need you to see the divisiveness or the mechanism of web building, of net casting, which is very typical to this particular spider. Dinopis is now being called as Asianopis, but in the same family, Dinopidae. And this is a special spider which casts a net. Do you remember how a fisherman throws a net onto the water surface? It exactly does the same. Please note that when it is spinning, it looks up to the sky, and when it is done with the first pair of 4 legs, it will hold the net in this position and then try to catch a prey by launching the web onto the surface. Do you see how nicely it is trying to spin and seal the meal? The spinnerets coming into full action. This is a net casting spider or Dinopidae family. So it's got orb-faced spiders. They are also called as orb-faced spiders. And this is a typical behavior of a net casting spider. All other spiders do not cast their net like this, the way it does, exactly in the position of a fisherman. Yeah. In no time, in within fraction of a second, it is done and it's over. A grasshopper prominently is stuck inside the web. You can go online and see these videos. So we will not waste time much over here. Let's get back to the presentation. Now, you will all like to see the spider, I know. So the spider is there in the next slide here. This is the orb-faced spider which was found, and this I have found near my office here in Odisha itself. So this is the Indian spider, the one which you saw there was not. And here in the other photograph, I show you the web which it casts on the others, on the prey. These are few other camouflaging masters which you can see. In the first photograph, I think you cannot even see and make out that in the dried flowers of a small shrub, there is a small Neospona hiding here. Here on the bark, you can see Hersilia, but only if you have very keen eyes can you see the camouflaging spider. The bark of this is a two-tailed spider. This is Pusitia verdiana or lynx, green lynx spider. And this is a crab spider, very typically found on Suzanne's eye flower in yellow color. Crab spiders can change their color within a limited range from white to yellow to green according to the color of the flower. Excuse me. Some people are still complaining, Sarvesh, that they cannot see. This is
Must be internet problem at their end. You please continue.
okay. This is Tetragnatha, which you can see like a stick. It exactly merges into the stick and is a master hunter in paddy fields. Some more camouflaging spiders. If I can click on this, you can see Rini here, or else it exactly looks like a boulder merged with the forest floor, and it is hardly 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters in size. Sorry, 1 centimeter in size. Here you can see another crab spider, and do you see the male here? And you can make out the reason why the males are different in color from the female. The males will be there here near where the pollen grains are close to it, and that's why the color of the body is so different. This is a poultice which you see here, but this one, the bark spider here, this is not an Indian spider. This is the Darwin's bark spider. The photograph is shot by Nikki Bay again, and is almost looking like a stump on the bark of a tree. That is the rate of camouflaging which you can see in spiders. Very, very apt, very, very keen upon camouflaging. Some more very beautiful spiders. This is a couple of Stegodipus tibialis which you find here resting in their nest. The male which is highly colorful, the female which is bland in color. The other one is a photograph of a mirror spider. Here you can see the plates of these mirrors can change and can change their shape. Some more curious critters. This is Arachneura, again from Arenidae. This is Poultice, which looks Poultice columnaris, which looks like an extended bark of a tree, almost not being able to be made out. This is one which is sleeping with hands folded, and this is a spiny back, in which we have seen a video already. Can you guess what this spider looks like? This is a spider which is not found in India, but I made it a point to put this in the slide so that many of you can at least see and make out that this looks and resembles a pelican. So these are the pelican spiders which are found in Africa, some parts of Australia. Yes, and they have got, and these are spider eating spiders which have got a long bill kind of a structure, and they can prey upon spiders, very small in size, but they prey upon spiders only. Babies in ballooning opened to expose the eggs, and these are eggs in development. If you can see the legs developed here, and some of the babies which have already developed, and this is the final stage of the first stage of the baby after they hatch out. Let us go ahead and see a video here in which ballooning can be seen. Maybe something inside the eggs can be seen. Please notice very carefully that the center egg here all over, you can see lot of other spiders in development where the leg structures have already been formed. But in this particular egg, you can see a movement or the heartbeat which starts after the egg is developed into a typical stage. You can see, have to be very keen with your eyes if you have to see it. There is a pulsating pulsation there, a vibration which is visible, and this has been shot with under a microscope, so not very clear videos, but it is visible. If you want to see, then it is actually visible. This is an egg under development. This whole coelomic cavity is vibrating. Just concentrate a bit and you can see the movement. So the same movement is seen ahead in one more place. The egg cases, these are a few of the other baby stages, and the ballooning you can see in the third photograph here. I hope all can see the photographs at least, because that's all I can show. And the baby developed here, the eggs, the egg case, the female, and the ballooning. This is the ballooning. Why is it called ballooning? Because from a structure like this, which is globular, suddenly it swells up in size, and then the babies slowly come out of it in large masses, like 100 to 200 babies will come out of it in huge numbers. So that is called ballooning. And with the air, they have got a lot of things to do with the air. They will make small strands and web lines like this and be together under a leaf and then slowly disperse with time. That's how the spider babies become independent in their lives. Development stages have been shown on the right side. Okay, let us come to a different chapter altogether where we will understand the story of a wasp and a spider. Why do we call it a spider and a wasp story? You can see it here in the pictures. This is the tarantula hawk wasp, some other wasps who are predating on spiders. We will study, or we will look into the life of a wasp, which is Indian and which we have recorded in our place. This is the potter wasp. Many of you must have seen carrying caterpillars like this, a very common phenomenon, and they would make pots of sand or mud and put caterpillars inside it. They look like this and then lay eggs here so that the babies can feed on them. So the spider wasps are basically from Pompilidae family or Sphaecidae family. Here we are looking into a Sphaecid wasp, which is the black and yellow wasp, mostly seen here in India, and it's called Sceliphron camentarium, also called the mud dauber wasp, because it uses mud to make its nest. Now it's very interesting to see that this nest is exactly the color of the wall here. So it collects mud and pieces of sand and dust from places so that it can camouflage the whole nest in this way. Let's go ahead and see what is there inside the nest. This is one typical cell in the middle stage of the whole nest being prepared. When we break the nest, we see silk-like structures in the inner lining of the whole nest, which has been prepared in different cells and chambers. You see more chambers. This is the nest in making. See how many colors of sand and mud have been used. And this is one typical chamber, which when we open, we found these. There is an interesting incident related to it, and I'll tell you, if you can count, all of you who can see it on screen, you will see 13 to 12 to 13 number of chambers have been found when we have upturned a live nest. And what we found inside was completely shocking. There were spiders all put inside. Spiders being carried by wasps is common, but equal number of spiders in each cell of each of the whole nest was really surprising. In few of these chambers, you see the babies have been formed, the wasp babies have been formed, and few of them are still later stage of development, so the spiders are still visible. We tried to pull out and count, and each cell like this had equal number of spiders punched into them. Imagine when we opened, this is a very old photograph, so kindly excuse the quality. They look like this, the baby of the wasp attached to the abdomen of the spider, and all these spiders which have been put inside are in a paralyzed condition. They are not dead and they are not completely living. So inside the ICU-like condition of the nest, which has got enough of air to breathe, but no water to contaminate, and enough space for the child to develop, the baby to grow. This is the baby which is sticking to a male spider here, you can see, and this is another developed baby of the wasp. On a clearer view, these are babies stuck to the abdomen of the spiders as food. What was another discovery was, along with the spiders were these little creatures. Can you identify these creatures here? These are the male spiders of these thomisids or the crab spiders. So in a crab spider season, when the wasp thought of making a nest, could find all the crab spiders in the garden. These two are aranids, but these are thomisids, crab spiders. And what we got as a bonus along with them was a male spider. Now what has happened is, I'll just show you how beautifully the male was discovered on the body of the female. So this is a typical video where you can see the spiders lying almost dead, half dead, few of the legs being eaten up already, And the male spider, which was so insignificant that the wasp did not feel like stinging it, is still sticking to the abdomen of the spider, hoping that it will get a chance to mate. It's a very sad story for the spider male. You see, this is the wasp baby, which is completely grown up, feeding on the spider. And this is the male exactly here, very close, completely living, and is still sticking to the body of the female, as if it feels that this woman, the female can be live and it can come up so that it can mate. This was a discovery when we had unrevealed a live wasp nest. One more. The male quietly sitting on the body of the female. This female was living. It's a different female. And the male is positioned so nicely, completely different in color from the female, and is waiting for a chance to go into the underside of the body and mate. Even when the female is moving, the male does not get affected. And in this, it is already weaving a nest on the body of the female. Does some typical courtship dance, probably. And then it's trying to weave a nest on the body of the female. The same wasp nest spiders where the males have been saved unhurt. The eyes. Okay. So we can go back again. Now this typical slide tells us how these are some of the wasp babies which have been unborn and we have pulled them out of the nest. This typical slide shows how frantically the wasp baby was trying to eat. So much so that the exoskeleton of the spider has got into the head of the wasp baby and it looks like another giant animal inside. But this is actually a spider head on which it was feeding upon. So typical weird photographs which come up. Okay, so this was all. Thank you so much for your patience. And before I can show you another concluding video, I would like to tell you all that you can explore to an extent as much as nature allows you. So we have been recently feeling that we can really take control of a lot of things, and just now you know about the virus outbreak, which has shown that we really cannot do much, and nature exactly always has the control. So whenever you think of doing science, studying, exploring, it's a great phenomenon to do that. It's a great thing to do that. But what is needed is to respect their space and also not hurt them. So let us resort to ethical conservation. That would be my end word. And I'll leave you with a video again to think as to what exactly is happening in this video. Please see it carefully before we close. And I can take some questions, of course. I have shown you the book lungs on the ventral side, but this is the dorsal side of the spider. And this is a quiz question for you as to what is exactly going on. You can see all these parts of the spider vibrating and moving and pulsating. And this part more clearly. So to all those people, those who have found spiders a little bit interesting after this presentation, please go back and find out what exactly is happening here. Thank you very much for your patience. And I think we can open the session for discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam, for this lovely session. I now request participant, if you have any question, please type them in the chat box. Do not unmute because it will create unnecessary noise in the background. So please write your question in the chat box and then we can take it one by one. Thank you. There are a few questions in the chat box. Can you read or shall I read it for you?
Okay. I am trying to see them.
Okay, I'll read it for you.
Let me see if I can actually. In the video, why did the Portia spider shake and startle the web of its prey in the first place if it was supposed to attack stealthily later on? Okay. So Portia has got this behavior of behaving like an assassin, like I told you, and the spider was trying to be mocked to think that Portia is a prey. So it was its first attempt to attack. It was not exactly disturbing, but it thought that if the spider could make sure that it is a prey and could come closer, it would have launched its attack then itself. But it did not. You could see that the Argiope slowly pushed back, knowing that it is not a prey. So it had to take another advantage position and launch the attack again. So that's how it did not startle its prey, but it was trying to feel itself as a prey himself. That's what it was trying to do in the first place. This was Chinmay Chari's question, if I have answered it properly. Thank you, Sangeeta. Ashwit asks something. What is the difference between spiders and tarantulas? Okay, so the basic difference between an arenomorph and a mygalomorph, I have listed. The chelicera positions, if you see, in an arenomorph, they are horizontal, and in a mygalomorph, the tarantulas have got vertically positioned chelicera. So that is the basic difference in which you can make out. And also tarantulas usually are very, very larger in size than the arenomorphs. So it's, clearly they are, it's properly you can make out, but just that the physiological difference is also there. The morphological difference. Being so tiny, what spider babies feed on? Very nice question, Prathamesh. We have yet to delve deeper into the developmental biology of spiders. And what has been seen is the spiders actually feed upon the babies, actually feed upon the other babies also. And in many places, you see by the time the ballooning starts, there are a lot of exoskeleton-like structures in the inside of the spider web or the egg case, which means that they have molted a number of times. So usually the yolk is enough sometimes to feed the spider, but many times they feed upon each other to also exist and survive. Anish, is antivenom available and how is it made? Well, antivenom exactly being made out of a spider, I'm not sure, but yes, some antidote is available when there is a bite. They apply it to the body, and it can only be done within few hours, like it happens in case of snakes. But in India, we do not have these things being done because most of the spiders, like I said, have not been found to be fatal, have been found to be not fatal actually. So antivenom as of now, I do not think so. But yes, some antidotes are available for tarantula bites in places where they are more rampant, like Africa, Australia, and South America. How is it made? I am not sure how it is made, but it is available to some extent. Yes. Do some Argiopes have 4 legs? No, Bhavna, they look like 4 legs, the garden cross spiders. They actually club 2 each. And so 4 pairs of legs, they look like 4, so that the signatures are visible and they can actually use it to decorate the web and also frighten the predators away many times. So that is basically the intent. Vivan, how many species of spiders are there? I wrote it in my first slide. It is 48466 abruptly, but every day these this keeps changing. So you can check in the World Spider Catalog to find out exactly how many spiders do we exactly have in the world, and the Indian list also. All spiders, Shan, have pheromones, but less studies on pheromones, and they communicate with each other also through pheromones, which can be transmitted into the air many times. Ant mimicking spiders specifically, yes, all of them have pheromones, but how do they interfere with the ant pheromones or not is less studied, and there is a huge lot of scope of studies being waiting to be done on that aspect. Mandar asks, each spider has its different web pattern. Yes, each spider has a different web pattern, so much so that in a Arachnid Argiopidae family or Arachnidae family, the whole lot of different genus you find have got different kinds of web patterns. Like I said, Citrophora has got a tent web. Nephilidae in Nephila has got a huge 1 meter spreading web. And Argiopes have got, garden cross spiders have got those signatures on the like the 4 legs with the signatures there. So that is a different kind of web. And sheet webs in Linyphidae family. Thomisus or the thomisids do not make any web. They are ambushers. Salticids and link spiders also do not make much web. So every spider, yes, has got a very different web pattern. And the funnel spiders, of course, I cannot miss them. In Lycosidae family, you have those round funnels which you will see when you walk a forest route. And every web in itself is different. Stegodipus, I will mention. The Ericidae family, which has the social spider status, has got sticky web, and a few other spiders in Araneidae also have got sticky webs. Stegodipus typically has got sticky webs in Saracenorum species, and they live together, making a mess with all the dust and the dirt together, and a very sticky web to touch. Vivan asks something which I could not get. Vivan, please repost your question. Shakti Kant Rath asks, what is the reason for mimicry in pelican spiders? Shakti, it is no mimicry to pelicans at all. Spiders have got no reason to mimic a bird. It is just that we have tried to put both the taxa together and that they look like pelican spiders. So we have named them pelican spiders, but it is just the way they are. They do not mimic those birds at all. Yeah, Prasanna, very good question. Why do spiders not get stuck inside their own webs? It is basically, I told you, those armor of legs they have got, and those little spiny things on the legs, or the spear-like, thorn-like structures. They try to detangle themselves with those structures, which are spine-like structures at the end of each leg. And that is how they understand how to walk with those thin lines which are drawn by themselves. So they never get stuck in their own webs. Thank you, Karthik. Sachi says, okay, we have got more questions. Do we have any online portal where we can find compiled data? Sachi, we are trying to put this up. There is an Indian spider portal now. You have got iNaturalist also, where you will find a lot of Indian spiders being uploaded, and different websites now which have come up to exactly record spiders and put them, but we have a long way to go. We have a recent website on Indian spiders. You can find it online, and few of the species, yes, they are there. Okay, the shape of the mirrors change on the mirror spider. Yes, this is something which is very interesting, and I will like you to typically find it out, because the last video which I have also shown, you see that there is a pulsating thing which I have put up as a quiz. So please go and find out that, and you will find out that there are different pieces of these mirror-like structures, which is mirror-like in the mirror spiders or Meotypa in Theridiidae family, but not so in the rest of the families. But still there are pulsating structures, and they come together and fall apart. So underneath the skin, there are these structures which can change position and shape. Please find it out for yourself, and you can mail me back if there are still queries. That's a quiz question. Divya, what is the chemical composition of spider web? Divya, chemical composition will be difficult to tell, but they are proteins. And I told you the silk glands exude some kind of protein which is not exactly in a solid form when they come out. They are semi-liquid type of a sticky composition which comes out, and they would solidify into threads later once they come in touch with the air. So that is how it functions, and they finally become thin silk-like draglines. So they are basically proteins, yes, silk. Can we identify spider on the basis of the web types? It's huge. Yeah. Spider broadly can be defined into their families only from the web types, but not identification is not possible from their web types. They can only be told whether they are they belong to Archaeops, or they belong to Linyphiidae family or Lycosidae family, but we cannot tell whether it's a particular genus or a species. How is spider silk harvested? Well, spider silk being harvested is a very recent thing which is being done, and not much has been done in it, because I feel these small creatures are really very difficult to harvest. But yes, the gene has been used to be put into other animals to try and see how much can we do. Like in sheep, we take out the hair. So this gene has been used in different animals on experimental basis, and that is how the bullet proof jacket thing comes into picture. But there is a long way of engineering to go ahead in this. And for harvesting, you cannot harvest it out of a spider which is so small, and the amount of silk which can be harvested is really minimal. So hardly it will make a difference if you harvest one spider, and you cannot harvest 10,000 spiders together with any machine or anything at all. This is a live process which happens in the body. So harvesting spiders is difficult, but yes, the gene responsible for spider silk synthesis inside the silk glands can be used in other animal models, and things have been done to a certain extent. Divya asks, as I have heard, the webs can also be used in making fabrics and medicine. Yes, to an extent, yes, some bulletproof jackets have been claimed to be made, but a rough experimental thing has been done. We have not used it on any commercial basis as of yet. And there is a long list of what exactly has to be done to really say that that has been a successful venture. Medicine, webs being used as medicine, I have not much heard about it. But yes, ethnomedicine in Sundarbans has been tried by using spiders, by drying the whole body up and using the spider dust, which I do not confirm until and unless there are records very robust supporting them. Some tribals have used dried spiders as medicines in some of the topical applications. So I think we are done. Which is the smallest spider? Well, the smallest spider is, again, we do not find it in India, and it is called as Patu. There are different species in it. Patu is the smallest spider, and different species found. We find it in China also. There could be a day when we can find it here in India also. We don't know. Can you repeat? Why do we find spiders in a wasp nest? Do the wasps bring spider eggs in their nest? No, Harshit, spiders, wasps never bring spider eggs. They lay their own eggs there in the spider's body and bring the spider and put it in the pots or their own nest. So the nests which are shown are wasp nests and not spider nests. So that is because they are trying to save a meal for the developing baby inside the pot which they have recently made, and with which they can confirm the easy hatching of their own baby or the wasp baby, not the spider baby. The spider is basically the prey there. I've already answered Shakti. Shika, ma'am, I have one picture of spider, but I'm not able to identify. Acha. I think Sarvesh, we can help them with this in the WhatsApp group if they can send and share. That can be sent across to me.
Yeah.
I can help you in this particular thing. Yes. Or maybe my mail can be of use, but are there any spiders who depend on sun or moon for preying, or specific diurnal and nocturnal spiders? Okay, thank you for this question. But there are nocturnal spiders specifically. In fact, most of the spiders we see are nocturnal, and whether they depend on moonlight or sunlight, I do not know if this is determined, but yes, diurnal and nocturnal spiders are there. Most spiders in few families like thomisids, lynx, salticids, lycosids could be diurnal, which are ambush. They are stalkers and they ambush their prey. But the ones which are obweavers, which wait for the insects to come out at dusk, wait for the prey to come and get stuck into the web, are nocturnal in nature. But there is no specific rule that a nocturnal spider cannot be out in the sunlight. So it's not a rule like that. Just that the web obweavers get have a chance of getting desiccated with the sun, so they are there in the at night. How do I contribute to save spiders? Pratham, I'm very glad you have put up this question. Please do not collect spiders wherever you go just for the sake of finding a new spider and naming them. There is a world of opportunities left to be explored other than taxonomy and naming spiders, because just by naming a creature as something, we do not get anything. Like I focused in my presentation also, please put keen interest upon behavior, and you will be really surprised to find so much of mystery, which is exactly uh, locked into different facets of these beautiful creatures and their life. Suj Priya, which part of India has the highest spider diversity? Very difficult question, Suj. I have no idea which part of India has got the highest spider diversity. India as a country is still evolving for the spiders to be discovered. Like I said, the whole world also, we have just 17% of the spiders being discovered. Lot of matter is left to be discovered, and no part as such. They are very cosmopolitan. They are present all over. So I don't think that there is any such part of India where you will find the diversity very high. Maybe we can explore the Northeast and the Western Ghats, which can tell us a story later. But as of now, I do not think the diversity has been localized into any region as such.
Hello,
Ashwit, how do spiders?
hello, excuse me.
Yeah,
The session is going really great with this question answer segment, but we have a little limited time. So I request Devi
paucity of time.
Priyadarshini madam to take two more questions, and then others can mail their doubts to madam, and she will be more than happy to reply.
Yes, that is possible. Ashwit asks, is sexual cannibalism common in all spider species? No, Ashwit, it is not there in all spider species, just some of them. How do the spiders look its world with its 8 eyes, and how does it depend on their vision in terms of predation? Ashwit, a very, very good question. And the spider eyes have got a long story to be told, because they are not like general insect eyes, which have mosaic vision. They have got a normal sighted vision, which is with a cornea, a lens, a vitreous layer, lot of rod and cone cells, and retina, photoreceptor cells, and retina. So the vision is so much elaborate. I cannot tell everything here. I will obviously like to elaborate it later, maybe sometime else. And all the 8 eyes do not see the same thing. They see different things at different times. Ballooning, I've already explained, I guess. The babies coming out and taking help of air to fly away into different areas and disperse. Yes, the 360-degree view. I think we have, is there any easy and fast method of multiplication spider population? SK Imran, we need not actually intervene into nature and multiply spiders. They are self-replicative, and they are very good reproducers. So I think they are good off on their own. I don't think any other question. A lifespan of spiders is really something which has to be seen. Most of the arenomorphs can live around, say, 8 months to 1 year, and the tarantulas or the mygalomorphs can live up to, say, 25 to 40 years even in captivity. So in the wild also, they have chances of living up to 10 to 12 years. Normally, the females. Males have a shorter lifespan.
Yeah, I think you have
I've seen
answered
black
most
bats.
of the questions. If
Yeah.
participants have any more doubts, they can mail to Devi Priyadarshini madam. I will share her email ID on our WhatsApp group. So thank you, madam, for sharing this information about spider with us and the question answer session after that. I thank you on behalf of Greenworks Trust for this lovely session. And I hope everyone also must have enjoyed the session thoroughly. We wish to bring more such informative sessions for you with various topics. I hereby request everyone to make small donation to our organization and support our nature education and awareness initiative. I will share bank details on our WhatsApp group again. And thank you once again for joining the session. And thank you, Devi Priyadarshini madam, to take out from your busy schedule and talking about spiders with us. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Stay
Thank you
safe.
so much. Thank you for the lovely audience here. Thank you.